Welcome back to College Compass by experts at scholarship.org. My name is Shannon Elwood. I am the Director of Communications for the George Snow Scholarship Fund at scholarship.org. So today we're going to be talking about our scholarship programs, the behind the scenes of what our programs are, what our eligibility looks like, what our application process looks like, and give you answer some of your most asked questions about our scholarship programs. At the time of releasing this episode, we'll be in the month of December, and our application process will be open until February 1st of 2026. To clarify, our applications are always open November 1st to February 1st every year. But joining us today, we have our Vice President of Scholar Services, Leslie Cornwell. She has been working in Scholar Services for years, helping students apply for our scholarships and then helping them as they receive our scholarships and attend college. So she's the perfect person to have back on the podcast to give you this advice. So welcome, Leslie. Thank you for joining again.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Of course. So the first question is just to jump into the eligibility. What are our eligibility requirements?
So for our scholarship, our eligibility is really very simple. You have to be a high school senior in either Broward County or Palm Beach County, and you have to have financial need. That's really it in a nutshell. We don't have a minimum GPA, and I think that really sets us apart. Mm-hmm. We don't ask for any test scores, and I think that's a huge relief to students. Yeah. So really, we just ask that require that the students have financial need. And when we say that, we're not tied to FAFSA, meaning that the student does not have to qualify for federal Pell Grant money in order to be considered financially in need.
Mm-hmm. And so then once they get the scholarship, where can they go with it? What majors, what are the limitations of majors in colleges?
We really don't have any limitations. The students can study any field that they want to study, and they can go anywhere that they want to go to school. The school has to be accredited, and that's really to protect the student, not to be attending a school that's going to charge them a lot of money and not give them a degree at the end of it or a certificate. But they can attend any school, either in Florida, outside of Florida, a public school, a private school, absolutely a vocational program, trade school, 2-year degree, 4-year degree. It doesn't matter. That doesn't affect the scholarship.
Mm-hmm. And now average award. What does the typical award look like and the length of the award?
Well, our average award last year in 2025 was over $14,000. These are very generous scholarships, and the students have it for the duration of their program. So if you are a traditional 4-year student, then we would be with you for the entire duration of your undergraduate degree. And the funds are divided by the semesters that you're in the program. So if you are in a shorter program, then your scholarship amount would be divided over that smaller period of time. But the goal is to have us with you, supporting you the entire time that you are in your post-secondary program.
Awesome. Thank you. And then, so later in the episode, because all of today's questions are going to be mainly focused on this main program, which is for seniors of Palm Beach and Broward County. But at the very end, we'll also have you talk about our Palm Health scholarships, which are a little bit different in eligibility requirements, but that's for nursing and mental health majors.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you. So you talked about the length of the scholarship, and then I think something that's important for listeners to know is this doesn't just go to tuition. It can cover other educational costs.
Absolutely. I think that what makes our program, well, there's many things that set our program apart, to be honest, but we work with the students. We're not inflexible that the money has to go to the school because there are a lot of students where they're fortunate enough that they don't have an expense at their school, but they do have a living expense. Mm-hmm. Maybe off campus. So the funds can be used for tuition. They can be used for dorm, housing or meal plan. They can be used for off-campus rent. It can be used for books and supplies. There's a lot of educational costs. So anything that would be considered an educational cost, as long as their tuition is first being dealt with, then the funds can go towards that.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome that we're able to do that for students. Which I have this as a later question, but maybe it's better to address it now, is you'll see a lot of students where their tuition's already covered, so they think they don't qualify for us as a result. But there's other costs involved.
100%. And a lot of students are just a little bit confused about that situation, which is understandable because this is their first go-round with the whole application and financial aid and all of that. But the tuition is actually the least expensive part. Unless you are living at home, and then you still have additional costs because even if you're living at home, you have to get books and supplies and you have transportation to school. But certainly if you're not living at home, your tuition is the least expensive part of it. So if you're fortunate enough that whether it's from federal aid or whether you are in a state like in Florida, they have a Florida Bright Futures program that can cover your full or 3/4 of your tuition. Or whether there's a state-run program in Florida, we have the Florida prepaid. So if your tuition's being covered, that's lovely. There is no such thing as too much money.
Right.
And free money is the best money, and that's what scholarships are. So, yeah, tuition is just one part of the expense, and usually the bigger parts are ones that students don't realize. We've had students who have called and tried to pull themselves from interviews saying, I have a full ride, so I don't need to come for the interview. And then upon questioning them, they say their tuition is covered, but they're not going to a local school, so they have a bill for their housing and a bill for their food. So that was not a full ride. So, yeah, we try to go out of our way to educate students to make sure they understand what they're going to be dealing with cost-wise.
Yeah. And so aside from qualifying because of these instances of costs, what would you say to someone who doesn't think they qualify for other reasons? Like they just don't think they could get a scholarship or that their grades are good enough? I
would tell them that that's not true. I know that's easier said than done. I know that there is a misconception that why should I apply for that scholarship? I have no chance of getting it. I'm not in the top 10, or I haven't done a lot of things in school. And I get all that. And I'm sure that there are programs, where that is a requirement. Ours is not like that, though. So we encourage students with all GPA levels to apply. I have specific donors who are looking for students with lower GPAs. So I absolutely have funding and opportunities for students from the highest to the low. And I really want students to understand that for our program, we give away a lot of scholarships. So this is not, first of all, you're also not competing on a national level. Yeah. This is a local scholarship, so your numbers are going to be smaller. That's number one. Number two is that, you have no chance of getting anything if you're not getting in the game. Yeah. So why wouldn't you at least try? Do your very best on the application. It may not work, but you've tried. And you may be surprised because a lot of our students are not what you would expect the typical scholarship student to be.
Yeah. Especially, I think one of the most common situations is we see students will have family obligations and they don't have time to contribute to activities, extracurricular sports, and so they feel like that hurts them in decisions like a scholarship or like our scholarship.
I think that that's really a fair assessment. I think students would think that. I know that when we go to the high schools to do presentations and we get to the section that deals with extracurriculars, I immediately say, do not freak out. This isn't mandatory. You don't have to have 10 of these. You don't have to have any of these. There are students who don't have that ability to stay after school for a variety of reasons. A very compelling one is what you just said. They have to leave school, go home because they're responsible for the care of a family member, and that is their life. They are a caregiver, so being part of a club on campus is just not going to happen. But that's a really compelling story.
Yeah.
And that's just one of, many reasons why you may not participate. High school's tough for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But that's okay because that's not going to hurt you.
Yeah. And in some cases, well, I shouldn't say in some cases, I think in any case, when that's the situation, you should be transparent on the application and find a way to include that, because that is an experience that you've had that could help us get to know you better and help your chances in the scholarship. And so that leads me into my next question about, we have unrestricted and we have restricted scholarships. So I think it would be helpful to explain what those are and give some examples of restricted scholarships that we do.
Absolutely. So for our scholarship fund, we have donors that come in and say, I want to give money to students to help them in their journey, and I'm not putting any criteria attached to this money. And that's lovely. It's unrestricted money. It's also lovely to have donors that come in and say, well, I want to help students as well, but I do have a specific criteria, and that's what we call a restricted scholarship. And I think that two of the restricted scholarships that I point out in my presentations, and I point them out for very specific reasons, are that the first one, 100 students will be getting this in the scholarship in Broward County this year. 100 students will be getting it in Palm Beach County this year. And this donor specifically says the ideal candidate would have a GPA between 2.5 and 4.0. So I can't have 100 students in Broward County who have a 4.0. That's not what the donor wants. The donor wants this range. And they're very good scholarships. So that's an example of trying to beat this misconception that you have to have a high GPA, but that's one of our restricted scholarships. We also have another wonderful restricted scholarship where the donor is focused on workforce majors. So we really are trying to make sure that students who are in CTE programs or attending technical schools, or even if you're not, but that's the path you want to go, you want to do a trade rather than a traditional 2 or 4 year college degree. Maybe you're looking for a certificate, HVAC or sonography or cosmetology or medical assistant. There's a whole range.
Fire science.
Right. Yeah. Fire science, EMT. This donor is looking specifically for students like that. And then they're also looking for students who are on the 4-year track, but in a workforce major like nursing or cybersecurity, elementary education, hospitality and tourism. So there's so many different options for students when they're applying for the scholarship, and they're just doing this one application. They're not applying for a specific scholarship. That's our job behind the scenes, to match them. But there are a lot of options for students.
Yeah, there are a lot of options. There's a lot of eligibility questions on our application, and I think you make a good point in saying this in your presentations at local schools, that it's okay to answer no to all of those questions, but when you answer yes, it puts you in the running for some of those restricteds.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, you don't know what you're applying for. You're just doing the one application, but there in that eligibility section that you just mentioned, that doesn't really have anything to do with you being eligible for the scholarship. It's whether or not you are eligible for certain restricted scholarships. And the questions can be very random, like, did you go to this middle school? Does your parent work at this place? Are you first generation? There's a whole, a lot of questions that are 98% of them are yes, no. And like Shannon just said, you can say no to every single one of them and you're still going to qualify for scholarships. Yeah. But if something does apply, then you need to check yes.
Perfect. And then so once someone gets a scholarship, how do we disperse our funds to them? What can they expect that process to look like?
Well, our students twice a year, actually now 3 times a year if you're going to be going in summer school, have to do a Google form basically where they're telling us all about their previous semester, how they did, what classes did they take, what's their GPA, what are they studying, where are they going, are they taking scholarship money? Sometimes students don't take it for a semester for various reasons. They direct us what we're doing with the funds. So their total scholarship funds are going to be divided typically over a 4-year period of time because the majority of the students are a 4-year traditional program. So they would be getting a scholarship payment, we call it a disbursement, every fall and spring for the whole 4 years. But if somebody said, I really need money for summer school, then we can adjust. We're very flexible. Obviously, if your program is shorter, if you're in a vocational program or a 2-year program and it's shorter, then the funds get adjusted and you're going to be paid differently. The money is not ever going to go to you as the student, ever.
Right.
It's going to either go to the school or your landlord or whatever it is. We're buying the supplies for you. So it isn't going to you. But it's designed this way so that we are with you throughout the entire, duration of your program.
Yeah, and I think that that's a beautiful thing that we're able to be with our scholars throughout their entire program, because a lot of scholarships will sometimes be just one time, or you have to renew the scholarship. So it's not a guarantee that you'll have it the next
Right.
year. But when you get ours, you have ours.
Forever.
Yeah, yeah.
We never let you go.
No, you have to stay with us.
You have to stay with us.
Yeah.
Why would you want to leave your snow family?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Snow Family. And so we also have scholar support services. And perfect to bring up Snow Family because of our scholar support services. So we really try to help the student as a whole, not just with the scholarship funds.
We are unusual. We are unlike most scholarship funds because we are not only about the money. I mean, obviously, the money is the reason that the student has applied for the scholarship. But we feel that it's just as important to have support. Most of these students, this is going to be a big transition when you go to school. It's really lovely to have this group behind you who genuinely cares about you, a community that genuinely cares about you and is invested, in your future. So we have all of these scholar support programs that we offer that all of our scholars have access to at no cost. We have, once a student gets a scholarship, the first question that they would be asked is, would you like a brand new computer? And if they don't, then they receive a college supply stipend check. And it's the only time we ever send money to the student. But we just have so many different programs. We have a career development program. This is actually the first time where we have 2 full-time people there for the students. So we have a full-time career coach who's there to help you with resumes, interview skills. Do you just need to talk? And then also a full-time director of career development. So that's to help you with internships, micro internships, jobs, connections, networking, whether you're going to grad school when you're done or, whether you're in vocational school and you need somewhere now that you have the certificate. I think that's hugely important. We have an emergency fund so students can apply if they're having, an unplanned expense. They can apply for that. We have a care package program, but I'm not going to talk about that because that's a surprise your first year in school. We maintain a scholar closet at our office at the same location as our office. So new and gently used clothing, shoes, accessories for all genders, which I think is really important. We have students who come by all the time who have an interview and they want something professional, and there's professional and casual, and then also this time of year we get coats and sweaters and boots, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
We send out Monday motivational messages every Monday, which are lovely. They are always on point. I don't care what program you're in. It's even when you're out of school. I read them every Monday, and it's as if somebody was writing this for me. I mean, they always hit home. And the purpose of that is, again, for us to have a touch point with the student and for the student to remember, oh, that's right, I do have this community behind me. There's a lot of other programs. We have our own LinkedIn group for the students and alumni. We do master classes. We have a mental health program where our students and their families can have free mental health counseling and financial counseling. See, the list goes on.
Yeah.
We do a lot. But we treat our students like we do our own family. And I think that is what sets us apart, is that we tell students that once you get the scholarship, you are part of the Snow family.
Yeah. And we're really proud of that. And we really enjoy the connections that we're able to make with our scholars and the check-ins, like those surveys that they submit every semester, that is another touch point, but that's a chance to just see how they're doing because we genuinely want to know how they're doing personally. And I wanted to bring this up, but I forgot in the moment. But a lot of those questions where we ask how their semester went or what their plans are for the next semester, that's not ever to penalize a student, but to see how we can help further as this idea of Snow Family.
100%. 100%. We're never looking to take money away. It breaks my heart when somebody emails me and says, I didn't do well in a class. I'm really nervous that I'm about to lose my scholarship money.
Yeah.
That's not what we're about at all. But it is just that. We want to see how they are doing. Do they need us to step in? We ask about their mental health. They don't have to disclose anything, or they can say that they've had trouble or struggles with their mental health, but they don't want to talk about it. Or they can say that they would like to talk about it, and then we do outreach with them. And all of that is because it can be a really tough, lonely, challenging time for the students. And so we just want to make sure they're on track. I mean, the goal is to get them to the finish line.
Yeah.
And so we want to just be there to help them along the way.
So then we don't have any requirements for students to be full-time students or to maintain a specific GPA once they're in college.
No. Students are encouraged, obviously, to be full-time only because we want them to get done in the correct amount of time. It's much more difficult for a student if they're only going part-time and they have to be in school for for a much longer period of time because life can intervene. There's probably a lot more risk that something's going to happen and cut short that educational journey. So obviously full-time is encouraged, but we are aware that there's students who just can't. They have to be working. They're helping support their family. Or they're supporting themselves.
Yeah.
And so, that's just not possible. And so that's not something that we would ever penalize a student for at all. And the GPA as well. I mean, if a student's really struggling, that's why they're answering those questions, and we see that. If that's a continued thing, we would step in and say, let's talk about, what options you have for a tutor on campus. There's a lot of free resources on campus. Sometimes students just aren't aware of them.
Yeah. And sometimes they just don't think to even look into it, but to have that extra support of someone to guide them.
Yep.
It's really nice and it's really helpful. So what role should parents or guardians play in the application process?
They should not be playing any part in the actual doing of the application. Hint, parents, don't do it.
We see it every year.
Yep. You are not helping your student at all. They're going to be going into a college program, and they need to have this independence. And we won't once the student receives a scholarship, we're not going to talk to a parent about the student's scholarship. We would be talking to the student. So it's a great time for them to learn their independence now. I encourage parents to be involved in the sense that they're encouraging the student to apply. A lot of times it's more important to the parent because it's on the parent's dime. So I get that. And so however, you can encourage your students to be applying for the scholarship, I think that's wonderful. There is a financial aspect to our application that you will absolutely have to help them with because, since we said at the beginning, financial need is our real eligibility requirement. We have to see financials. So you're not uploading a tax return. I'm not asking for anybody to send me their student aid report from FAFSA. But I do need questions answered about the financial situation. And that's where you really can help them, and you will have to help them because they're not going to have the answers to the questions.
Right. And so then the next question would be, what are some common mistakes that you see that are very easy to avoid on the application?
I think the biggest common mistakes are made out of either you don't care or you're rushing, or you're being lazy with the application. You know, there's absolutely no reason to be submitting an essay that's full of misspelled words, no grammar, no punctuation. You know, the essay is just one long sentence. I think that those kind of mistakes are the easiest, where you just aren't paying attention, and that comes across, though. So the people that are reviewing and scoring the application, they can see the difference between somebody who's taken the time, proofed their application, made sure that they went through every single thing and fixed any mistake, and somebody who cared a lot less about what they were turning in.
Right.
And so I think those are all things that can be fixed if you just take your time.
Yeah. And I think it's important to say that even though the application, you have to start the application at some point, but you're not required to submit it that same day that you start it. You can save and come back to it.
Yeah, 100%. I would never want somebody to be thinking that that was a requirement. You have a long period of time. I mean, from the time it opened on November 1st to February 1st, you have 3 months to do this application. Mm-hmm. So students are encouraged, start it, do what you want to do, stop, save it, come back to it. A lot of times when you come back, you have a completely different mindset. Yeah. You know, whatever you wrote at the beginning, then you come back and you're like, why did I write that? So I think that's always a smart thing to do. And there's no benefit for rushing to be, I want to be one of the first people to submit. It doesn't work that way. The people that are reviewing your application have no idea when you submitted it. So, I mean, I know there are students who have come up to me in presentations and they're like, I need to take care of, you know, these outstanding tasks. And that's lovely. And that's different because I think that person is still taking time with their application. They just wanted it to be finished and not have to worry about it, and that's wonderful. We're just not. You shouldn't do this in one sitting. You should take your time.
So, when you work with students on our applications, what advice do you give them? What are some tips that you commonly give them?
I am a big believer that the students have got to be their advocate. The people who are reading these applications don't know anything about the student, and they only know what's in the application. So I think a lot of times students make mistakes and just assume that you know what they're talking about. Like if a student is in an academy at their high school, and we have that here in our high schools in this area, but you don't write about it. I'm not saying that's going to keep you from getting the scholarship, but also that sets you apart from somebody else, and nobody's going to know that unless you write about it. I mean, that's just one thing. It could be that you have a leadership role or that you've been a caretaker. It could be a million different things, but if you don't put that in, you've lost an opportunity and you're not being your best advocate. I think being professional, students who, there's things that students do on the back end that staff sees that, with their email.
Yes.
Their email is not a professional one. You should not have that in a scholarship application nor a college application. And to be honest, that should end. That should be something maybe you use among your circle of friends, but certainly once you move beyond high school, if you're applying to be in a club or you're, applying for a position, it shouldn't be with an email that's not professional. We have students who set up voicemails that are completely unprofessional, and we're calling our students or we're calling the applicants, and when we call somebody and they have a voicemail that's really inappropriate, it's not something that is like, wow, that's so great, There was a time and place for that, but you have to, know, you have to be aware of when that's not the appropriate time.
And I think maybe, like for the voicemail example, maybe someone set that up as a joke when they weren't pursuing scholarships, weren't pursuing a job. But now you are, and so maybe now is a good time to go listen back to your voicemail, make sure it sounds professional, and let's update it.
Yeah.
Sometimes the voicemails are really funny, but it's still very unprofessional.
Yes. And sometimes when you finally get the student and you tell them something about the voicemail, they're horrified because it's like what you said. They did that years and years ago. You don't ever think to go back and listen to, you're not listening to your own voicemail. And if nobody said anything to you, so just warning you ahead of time.
Yeah.
Check your voicemail.
Or sometimes we'll call a student and maybe because it's a number they don't recognize, they want to answer the phone because they want to know who's calling, but they don't actually speak.
Ugh, that drives me crazy. Exactly. You dial the number, the call is picked up, there's silence. And that's bad because that's annoying and it's not professional. So you have to say hello, and then finally they'll say hello. What's also an issue is when I announce who I am and that I'm with the George Snow Scholarship Fund and somebody says, or okay, with a complete lack of enthusiasm. Again, it's not an ego thing. It's that I'm calling you from a scholarship fund. You've applied to get scholarship money.
Yeah.
You might want to be a little bit more energetic and respectful on the phone. I could be calling about a job. You answering the phone like that is not going to be filling me with confidence.
No. And you never know who could be calling.
You never know who could be calling. So don't do that.
Yeah. Cautionary tales.
Cautionary tales. I like it.
So then letters of recommendation, that's an option in our application. What would you say for those?
Yes, they are optional, not mandatory. I always encourage students to do that if you can. You can upload up to 3, no more than 3. They don't have to be from people from your school. They can be, quite honestly, anybody that you want it to be, but I would not do a family member. I would not do a friend. And the reason I think that these are important is because, for one, I know the selection committee members enjoy them. And the reason that they enjoy them is that anybody who writes you a reference letter is writing nice things about you. And they're saying things about you that you don't say about yourself.
Yeah.
So every time a reviewer reads one of these, it's a way for them to get to know the student better. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. I get it. It's a pain in the behind. It's an extra hassle. Ask one person, and don't wait until the last minute to do it because they're doing these same things for a lot of other students, and they may just tell you, I can't.
Yeah.
And again, I have students get the scholarship who don't have these attached, so I'm not saying it's a make or break kind of thing. But if you want my advice, I would definitely at least get one put into your application.
Yeah. And for our scholarship, it's not required that it be addressed to us. I think that's important.
Right.
It could, you could bank some recommendation letters right now. Just go out and ask to prepare for this so that you're not in a rush later on, and it's okay that it's not addressed to us.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, so tax returns and resumes, we get this question a lot, if those are required for the application.
No, they're not required for the application. The only thing that can be uploaded into this application are the recommendation letters, nothing else. No tax returns, and no student aid report, no resumes. None of those can be uploaded into the application. I really stress the tax returns because I do know that we've gotten calls before for students who want to apply, but they say my parents won't release my their tax returns to you.
Right.
I can tell you in 43 years of the scholarship fund's existence, that's never been an issue of getting a tax return that somebody else has access to. The reviewers don't see any financial information. That is solely for staff members at George Snow. And they will have to produce a tax return if their parents file taxes if they make it to the next stage, because I do have to have verification. But I also tell students, sometimes your parents maybe don't file, or maybe you're not living with your parents. Maybe there's an unusual situation. It's not a reason not to do the application. We will find a solution.
Yeah. And so transparency, being in contact with our team. Whenever there's an issue, if you are afraid that you won't be able to finish the application, you want to make sure to reach out to our team and ask for some advice. And, of course, you don't want to do that on February 1st at midnight, though,
Right.
because at that point, it might be too late.
Right.
But definitely advance notice and have a conversation might help you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. Students will email us all the time afterwards saying, I didn't complete this because of X. But it's such a simple thing. All they would have had to have done is reached out to us. We would have told them how to fix that issue. They could have submitted, but now the portal's closed and they can't. And so, that makes me sad when that happens, but I can't really do anything about that.
Yeah. So another question I have for you, because we've seen this sometimes, people will ask if there is a chance that they could lose their scholarship. I think there's been other instances where maybe they had to maintain for Bright Futures or for other, like maybe grants, they had to maintain certain requirements. What would you say to someone who has this concern with our scholarship?
I would say you're not going to lose the scholarship if it's because of academic reasons, like we were saying a little bit earlier. If you've had some tough semesters, you've had to withdraw from classes, or you might have failed a few classes, you have, an issue with your mental health one semester and everything really kind of tanks. That's unfortunately life. We're not going to abandon you. What will make you lose your scholarship is if you just completely abandon your requirement of doing your paperwork. That is a requirement. You sign an agreement that says that, at least twice a year you will be doing this required paperwork. If you just completely ghost us, and you have to do this paperwork even if you're not taking scholarship money that semester, but if you just completely disappear, and we've had several semesters where we have not heard from you, that's going to be what puts your scholarship in danger, because we have an obligation to the donor. Right. The donor gave money for your education. You're not using the money. The money's just sitting there. You're also not part of the yearly requirement is to write a thank you letter to the donor. So if you're blowing our requirements off, then you haven't done that. That's a big no-no. So that would be what would be putting your scholarship in jeopardy. And we would reach out to you numerous times, texting you, calling you, emailing you, saying we haven't heard from you. If we don't hear from you within this allotted time, your scholarship will be reawarded. And then if we continue not to hear, then they will lose their funds.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important to touch on that.
Yeah.
So we're nearing the end. Now knowing that, I would like for you to talk about the Palm Health scholarships that we do.
So we have a scholarship program that we run for students who are not high school seniors, who are studying nursing or mental and behavioral health. And the link to the application is on our website, scholarship.org, and there are specific requirements. This donor wants the students to be attending a Palm Beach County school. And if you're not attending a Palm Beach County school, if you're in an online program, then you need to be living in Palm Beach County or working in Palm Beach County. But the scholarships can be for your undergraduate work in the nursing program, starting with your junior year, and all the way up through whatever graduate degree you would be pursuing on the nursing side. And then on the mental behavioral health side, there are a lot of programs. Again, they're listed on the website that would qualify. I wouldn't even begin to list them here to say social work or psychology, because there's a whole bunch. Yeah. But if you are majoring in that in an undergraduate, then you would be eligible to apply. And the same with the graduate, as in the nursing, any graduate level program. Those scholarships differ from ours because these are only 1-year scholarships. So you can keep reapplying every year that you're in school, or maybe you start out and get it as an undergrad and then you move on to graduate school. You can keep applying every year. There's no guarantee that you will receive it. You have to still, do 100% effort. But yes, that's a lovely opportunity for students who are in these fields.
Thank you. And so with both of these programs, the one for high school seniors at Palm Beach and Broward, and for the Palm Health Foundation scholarships, the selection processes, they're pretty similar to one another. So I was going to ask now if you could explain what the selection process looks like for both.
Sure. So for the main high school senior scholarship, we're very fortunate to have such a wonderful community, And we have over 200 people in the community who read and score the applications. So every application is read 5 times. We drop the lowest score, and then the average of those 4 remaining scores is your application score and determines if you make it to an interview, which is the next round. It's a very complex system designed to make sure that we are as fair as we could possibly be. No student is being harmed because of one person's bad score. So it's a pretty detailed process. If you get an interview, which is the next step, then you start all over again. Your application score doesn't matter, and now you're starting again with the interview, and you will be ranked. And they are in-person interviews, and we give out a lot of information to the students before the interviews about how to dress, and here's some sample questions, and here's behavior, things that you can do that get you off on the right foot, from the start. The process for Palm Health is very similar. Their applications aren't read as many times as the George Snow High School Scholarship. The application for Palm Health is not as long, not as involved. And so it doesn't get read as many times. But the process is still the same. It's people in each field. So for people who are applying for the nursing scholarship, they will be read by reviewers who are in the nursing field. And for students who are, studying and applying for the mental behavioral health scholarship, everybody who reviews works in that field because they really are the best ones, to be scoring these applications. And staff never scores anybody's applications. We read them because we love reading the stories and learning about the students, but we don't score any of them.
Yes, and eventually we get to work with our scholars, with these applicants as scholars.
Yes.
So it gives us a clear understanding of who they are.
Yeah.
So it's just a nice personal touch to know that.
I agree.
And so thank you for answering all these questions today.
Pleasure.
Before I let you go, I do want to ask, if someone is listening to this and they have further questions for you and your team, where would you recommend they go?
I would recommend that they go to the website, scholarship.org, because that has the contact information of myself and my team. You can reach out to any of us. There are 4 of us on the Scholar Services team, and any of us would be the person that you can ask if you have any issues or if you have any questions. We are also the ones that will be with you when you get the scholarship because we're going to manifest that positivity.
Yes.
So when you get the scholarship, we would be the people who you would be dealing with for your entire duration as a Snow Scholar. So I would suggest that you do that because that's where all of our information would be housed.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and sharing all this very helpful information about our selection process and our application process. And so on that note, I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to College Compass by experts at scholarship.org. I hope that this has encouraged you to complete an application with us. And again, they're available at scholarship.org until February 1st, 2026 at midnight. And we hope that this has helped inform your application process. In the meantime, you can stay up to date on what we're doing by following us on social media. On Instagram and LinkedIn, we are George Snow Scholarship Fund. And for Facebook, TikTok, and X, we can be found at Snow Scholarship. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.